You've probably come across this video before, a scene that looks almost real, showing how our ancestors used to live. But I bet that while you were watching, if you're anything like me, you kept asking yourself, who are these beings exactly? Are they cavemen? Primates? What does 4.7 million years ago even mean? Were snakes really that big? Did they really attack these humanoids in this way? And how about these ancestors of ours? Did they actually eat that stuff? Did they eat snake eggs? That's what we're going to uncover in this video by breaking down the details shown in this fascinating look at how prehistoric humans managed to survive. What historical period was 4.7 million years ago? About this time, Earth was in the Cenozoic era, more precisely in the Neogene period, during a stage called the Pliocene. From the perspective of human evolution, this moment corresponds to the lower Paleolithic within what we call prehistory, the time that marks the beginning of the very first lineages of human ancestors, such as Australopithecus. These hominids were likely the dominant primates in African environments, spreading through savannas and forests. Where did Australopithecus live back then? Australopithecus lived only in Africa about 4.7 million years ago, mainly in East Africa, which is seen as the main stage for the first steps of the human lineage at that time. No fossils from this group have been found on any other continent from that period. The main fossil sites for Australopithecus anamensis, the earliest known member of the genus, are in Kenya around Lake Turkana and Ethiopia in the Afar region, along the Awash River Valley. Today, these places are part of East Africa, right along the Rift Valley, a hotspot for studying human evolution, such as, first, Ethiopia Afar. Sites like Warransa Mill and Ledi Geraru have fossils that are over 4 million years old, including the famous skull nicknamed MRD, which confirms the presence of early Australopithecines in the area. Second, Kenya, Lake Turkana. Fossils of Australopithecus anamensis have also been found near Lake Turkana in northern Kenya. Third, South Africa a bit later. Fossils of younger species like A. africanus, which lived between 3.3 and 2.1 million years ago, were found at Sterkfontein near Johannesburg. But there's no evidence of Australopithecines living there as far back as 4.7 million years. What did these human ancestors eat? These hominids were probably the dominant primates in African environments, spreading across savannas and forests. The Australopithecus and other hominids living 4.7 million years ago had a diet mainly based on plants. They ate fruits, young leaves, roots, tuber seeds, and even tree bark. Paleontological research shows that meat wasn't a big part of their diet, though they might have occasionally eaten eggs, small animals, scavenged carcasses, insects, and other creatures that were relatively easy to catch. Their eating habits were shaped almost entirely by what nature provided in the African woodlands and savannas. How did Australopithecus deal with illness, injuries, and bandages? Fossil records show that some Australopithecines had injuries, diseases, and scars in their bones and teeth. This tells us they went through traumas and health issues, as we see in fossils of Australopithecus sediba and others. However, there's no direct evidence that they used plants or substances as medicine or bandages. What we know about how they might have dealt with health problems comes from two main sources. One, looking at the behavior of modern primates, and two, later archaeological evidence from more recent humans. But for 4.7 million years ago, we basically have no proof. So what do we know about Australopithecus and healing? Talking about illness and injuries, fossils show broken bones, dental problems, and even traces of infections or tumors. But we don't see any signs of intentional treatment, like surgical marks, stitching, or applying substances. Now, when we talk about primate behavior, wild chimpanzees, for example, lick wounds, use insects or leaves to scratch, or maybe to clean cuts, but they don't actually make bandages or use medicinal plants in any systematic way. It's possible Australopithecus did something similar, but that's just speculation. But when the subject is archaeological record, the use of plants as medicine shows up much later. In human societies tens of thousands of years ago, not millions, but around 4.7 millions. There's no evidence at all of medicine preparation, plant-based remedies, or bandages made from fibers or resins. And when we talk about tools that they may have used at this time, the earliest stone tools appear much later. And even then, there's no real link to medical practices. No evidence has been found for tools specifically used to treat injuries or illnesses. Which hominins were around at that time? Based on the fossil record, there weren't many hominins living 4.7 million years ago. The common ancestor of humans and modern chimpanzees had already split off, and the genus Australopithecus was just starting to appear in East Africa. The earliest recognized Australopithecine, the Australopithecus anamensis, shows up in the fossil record between 4.2 and 3.9 million years ago, so a bit after the 4.7 million year mark. Before that, the closest hominins to our lineage were species of the genus Australopithecus and even older ones like Sahelanthropus cadensis and Orornithogenensis, which already showed early hints of walking on two legs. How did these hominins live together? The way these early hominins, Australopithecines, and their ancestors coexisted isn't really clear because fossils from that period are so scarce. What we do know is, first, they lived in similar environments, open woodlands and savannas, especially in the East African Rift region. Second, they likely competed for resources. Even if there's no direct proof of fights, overlapping ecological niches would have meant competition for food, water, and shelter. Third, about their social behavior. They were group living, sticking together for protection from predators and probably sharing basic foraging techniques. Fourth, their mixed diet, mostly plant-based, but they'd also eat small animals and insects when they could, hinting at flexible food strategies. There's no evidence of peaceful or hostile interaction between different species at that time. The fossil record is just too thin. Those sorts of species interactions, like what we later see between Australopithecines and the earliest Homo groups millions of years afterward, aren't something we can confirm for as far back as 4.7 million years ago. At this time, Australopithecines lived in the savannas and woodlands of Africa, surrounded by all kinds of skilled predators. The biggest threats to their survival were, first, leopards, Pantheropardus. Some fossils show puncture marks that match leopard teeth, meaning these cats hunted both adult and young Australopithecines. Just like they do today with monkeys and antelopes, leopards would drag their kills up into trees to eat them. Fast and powerful, leopards can take down prey weighing up to 60 kilograms, so they were a constant danger, especially to isolated or vulnerable individuals. Second, extinct big cats. Predators like Dinofelis, sometimes nicknamed the terrible cat, had teeth perfectly adapted for crushing skulls and necks. They seem to have specialized in hunting hominins like Australopithecines, taking advantage of their small size and lack of natural defenses. Third, large birds of prey. Even if not common at the very beginning, there's evidence that big African eagles sometimes attacked Australopithecine children. The classic case is the Tong child skull, which has marks thought to be from a giant crowned eagle. Birds of prey may even have influenced human evolution by creating natural pressure for bigger body size over time. Fourth, other carnivores. Hyenas, large wild dogs, and even giant snakes were part of the same ecosystem. The evidence of direct attacks on hominins is thinner here, but these animals definitely added to the dangers of the landscape. How did Australopithecines deal with predators? Both their anatomy and behavior point to survival strategies that help them live with constant danger from predators. First, tree refuge. Strong arms and flexible joints show that Australopithecines were good climbers. They likely used trees for food, rest, and especially for sleeping safely above ground, away from nocturnal hunters like leopards and other deadly cats. Unlike modern humans, tree dwelling was a big part of their defense, something common among primates living in open habitats. Second, group living. Social life was key. By living in groups, they could warn each other of predators with visual signs and alarm calls, improving everyone's chances of escaping together. Third, bipedalism. Walking upright not only let them travel longer distances, but also gave them a better lookout across the landscape. Standing tall helped them spot predators from far away. Still, climbing remained essential for last-minute escapes. Fourth, risk reduction. Later, early Homo species would develop tools and eventually fire, but Australopithecines didn't yet have that advantage. For them, the main defense strategy was agility, caution, awareness of danger, and the protection of living in groups. How did Australopithecus coexist with these giant snakes? The Australopithecus weren't the main targets of giant snake predators, but the threat was always there, especially for babies or vulnerable individuals. To avoid snakes, they would sleep in trees, stay in groups, and remain constantly alert, developing warning systems that relied on sounds and gestures to signal when predators, including snakes, were nearby. This constant danger pushed them to adapt with sharper senses, more social cooperation, and group defense behaviors. What was the impact of prehistoric snakes on hominid behavior? The presence of giant snakes in the African savannas had a big influence on how hominids evolved. Fear of snakes created a selective pressure that sharpened their vision, sped up their reaction times, and made them develop an instinctive fear of snake-like shapes. Evolutionarily, snakes encourage group living, more developed communication systems to share warnings, and habits like choosing safe zones, especially trees, for resting. Some researchers even believe snakes may have influenced the invention of tools or the control of fire to keep dangerous animals away. What snakes existed at that time? Snakes had already been widespread for millions of years before the Australopithecus, and by 4.7 million years ago, there was already a huge variety of species. Extinct families like the Matsoidae, which included massive snakes, were still around in that period, along with early ancestors of modern boa species, boas and anacondas, colubrids and elapids, venomous snakes like cobras. Fossil evidence also shows the presence of gigantic snakes such as Matsoia, which lived in a wide range of environments across continents and coexisted with much smaller snakes already well adapted to life in forests and savannas. How did prehistoric snakes eat their prey? Giant snakes such as those of the Matsoidae genus and earlier, the famous Titanoboa and Giganophis, had highly mobile and elastic jaws, allowing them to open their mouths and swallow prey much larger than their own heads. Fossil records indicate that besides preying on crocodiles, turtles, and even small proboscideans, relatives of elephants, snakes like Giganophis clearly had the ability to prey on mammals the size of gazelles or primitive antelopes, as demonstrated by paleontological finds in North Africa. These serpents possessed extremely muscular bodies. After capturing prey, most likely using ambush and constriction, similar to modern boas and anacondas, the snake would coil around the animal, suffocating it slowly to avoid internal damage and facilitate swallowing. The mechanics of swallowing their prey. The ribs of these snakes were capable of expanding, and their separated jaws would advance over the prey, which was swallowed whole after being lubricated with saliva and gradually compressed with undulating body movements. This pushes the food deep into the digestive tract. After such a large meal, like an hominid or antelope, digestion could take weeks, during which time the snake remained almost immobile, hidden in dense vegetation or bodies of water to protect itself from other predators. In summary, prehistoric giant snakes had all the necessary adaptations: mobile jaws, strong constriction, elastic bodies, and slow digestion to attack, kill, and ingest hominids and other animals of similar size. This made them crucial super predators in the ecosystems of their time. So that's it. Hit the like button if you learned something new or just had a little fun finding out how humans survived in prehistoric times. Drop your questions and let me know what you thought of the video in the comments. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more cool facts like these.